and welcome to healthyhouseplants.com, where we teach you all about gardening in the great indoors. If you'd like to support our show, please use our Amazon affiliate link below. Today, a viewer-inspired video. Judy Samuel said she would like to see a video on how to revitalize a Monstera adansonii. And this is a beautiful Monstera adansonii that does actually need a little help here. It needs to be repotted for one, and I got it like this, so haven't really changed it because I haven't done much with it, except of course take care of it and put it in the right lighting and things, but because I want to use it for this particular video. So this name also has, although there are other plants that have the same nickname, but also named commonly Swiss cheese plant because of all the little these are actually fenestrations is what they are in the leaves, but it looks like when you cut, when you would make the little snowflakes with paper. Okay, so we are going to revitalize this plant here. She's got some straggly ends going on here. So before repotting her, because she does need to be repotted, and I have some various size pots here to choose from once I get her out of her pot and decide in terms of the size of the root mass which pot would work. So hopefully one of these will work. Now I do have a care video on these as well, so we'll link that as well, so that you get an idea of, you also can find out how to grow these beauties as well. But this will be one that we'll be revitalizing. We can take a look at her in the future, see how she's doing as well. So as mentioned, going to check tips. This tip looks pretty good. This tip, so if you see tips like this, give you a close-up view here. You see the tip, that is actually the start of a new leaf, and it's very healthy. It's nice, and a nice lime green color. Generally, a lot of the times when plants are growing, the first growth will be a limey green color, and then it will green up as the leaf matures. So that's an indication of healthy, and you can see there's no browning on there. So this will be a nice leaf. So I'm not going to take this end off right here, but I'm going to look for some others that I could potentially take off. So you just want to, before you repot, it makes the repotting a little easier. Now here's another one. This one's pretty healthy too. It makes the repotting easier though if you have less going on with, especially if it's foliage that you don't want on the plant anyway. So I thought I'd seen some ends that were a little on the aha, here we go. Now this one is, although it does have, well, this isn't bad. It does have also the same thing that I was talking about, the green. So I don't think that was the one I'd seen, but I know I saw one that was having issues, to be, of course, prior, but still looking for it. So this is what you want to do. Now here's one where it looks like something was chopped off at some point. The leaf didn't really form right. I'm going to cut it back, and then this leaf's a little straggly, so I'm going to cut this one back a bit. It's when you're repotting, the plant has to put energy into growing roots. So if you can prune off a little bit of the top, it's always a good thing. These are stem nodes here where new growth is going to come. There was some growth there before snipping that off. I'm going to cut back to here. You cut right above the stem node so that new growth will come out from that. Once the plant acclimates to its new digs in the pot and starts, aha, this is what I saw, and starts to grow again, then it will grow some new foliage on the end there where I trimmed it. Okay, so here we go. See this? These are also straggly. This browning at the end there is not really a good thing. This leaf looks okay, so you could just simply cut there, and then you're going to get some new healthier growth there. This one is long and kind of, now another thing too, if you see a lot of lack of leaves in between and you want them to be fuller, these will eventually grow. They can grow. A lot of times you can stimulate it just by cutting off that part, or you can also cut to a larger leaf like this. And I had cut off there, but I'm going to cut here. So that makes it shorter. Like I said, a little less stuff going on. Now you don't want to cut too much because you do want, I'm going to be putting this plant, they like to grow up on moss poles. I'm going to be attaching to a moss pole, so I wouldn't want to take off all of the vines. I wouldn't have anything to work with. There's a little bit of leaf tip burn on this plant. I just took that off. There's not too much. That can come from too dry conditions or not enough water. Hard to say before I got this plant. If it was, it may have been droughted a bit. It was pretty dry when I got it. Okay, so for the most part, we've cleaned up stuff here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take an overall view look here and choose a pot as well for the plant, and then repot it, and also insert a moss pole, which looks like I didn't bring to the table, so I will have to stop camera at that point and go get it. Okay, so here we have the plant. You see it's in fairly good shape. So if yours isn't in, there's a leaf taken out. If yours isn't in as good a shape, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You still can revitalize it using these tips. Here you can see we've got some roots coming out of the bottom, so definitely an indication that it's time for this plant to be repotted. I'm going to tap on it gently. You can also do this on the side of a table if you need to, if it's not coming out as easily. This was watered prior. You want to water at least an hour before repotting a plant. I do have a whole repotting series. I'm linking that below, as well as other things that I mention here, and that will help. That series will help you as well. And this is one of the signs of needing repotting. So yes, this plant has pretty much filled up this soil. One reason why it was drying out quite a bit, it was drying out quite a bit for me. And so now getting it into a little bit more soil is going to definitely help with that, keep it moister. These monsteras, all monsteras actually like to be kept on the moist side. They're from the jungle, so where it's high humidity and lots of rainfall. So you really don't want these guys drying out. You're going to get brown leaf tips like you saw, and eventually you're going to get not great growth, etc. Okay, so a lot of this is root. Now you see those circling roots. Sometimes that can cause a problem and cause the plant to kind of strangulate itself. So I'm going to loosen that up a little bit. Another thing you can do when they're pretty tight in the root ball's pretty tight like this is you can run just a little bit along the side and with something sharp. That just breaks it up. Now you don't want to go too crazy with it. Because you obviously don't want to kill the plant, but you do want to break things up a little bit, shake things up a little bit for the roots, so that the roots will then start growing right away into the new soil. Okay, so I've got that, and you shake it a little bit too to see if excess soil comes out. This one is a lot of root mass, so it's not letting go of much of this soil. You do, if you can, let go of some of the old soil, because you're going to be putting in new soil, and the new soil is going to have nutrients and be less likely to have salt buildup, which builds up from fertilizer and watering, etc. So I think, but that's probably as loose as we're going to get it, and you don't want to, like I said, go too overboard with any of these kinds of things, because you don't want the plant to go into shock and then not be here, right? Now, I have a video on the importance of the root mass to pot size. You want 2/3 root and to 1/3 soil within the pot. So we're going to look for the right size pot here among the collection. This one is the shortest one. The smallest one is definitely too small. This one's too small, and I figured it would be. I just wanted to show you when you do this, you might want to start with a smaller one. You'd be surprised. Sometimes the smaller, even though this was in this size of a pot, I've had situations where there wasn't much root left for various variety of reasons in here, and it would have actually fit in this pot. I didn't think it would with this one because it had been sucking up water, but that can happen. So have some smaller pots on hand as well. As I talk about in my root rot series, and I have two root mats videos as well, if you put in too much soil, you will set the plant up for root rot, even these guys which like moisture. Okay, so this size pot, let me check that out. So this one is good. It will give me, it's got a lot of room on the sides, and there's some room on the bottom. You want 2 to 3 inches on the bottom of the pot when you fill up the pot with potting soil. You don't want to go much deeper than that. I mean, if it's a very large plant, you can have some more inches, but if it's a small, medium-sized plant, you definitely don't want 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches down there. It's way too much wet underneath. So this one would work. So this is a possibility. I'm not, this blue and everything is not, it's not my favorite for to go with the plant, the look of the plant, the style of the plant. This one is very similar in size, and it's a little bit bigger than this one, but not much. However, knowing that these monsteras do like to grow, and they will grow roots pretty quickly when they are healthy, this will be okay, even though it's a little bit bigger than that one was. And I really like the color of this one, the limey green, and the little birds here too are cute. I'm really liking the look of this. So that's another thing, obviously, is putting it with a pot that you really like. However, not falling into the trap of, I love this pot and I know it's way too big and I'm going to use it anyway, and hopefully the plant will be okay, because you'll still have the pot in the end, but the plant probably not. So this one will be good. Just try some other ones. This one is too big. There's just a little bit too much root mass in there. The color's okay with this plant. This one's closer to this other one, and this one looks okay too, but it's a little bit bigger than this square one, and I still really like the look of this square one. So, and thank goodness it is the right size. So what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and pot this up. However, and make sure whatever you're using has a drainage hole. This one does have a drainage hole, but I'm going to have to cut the camera here to get screening. Actually, I use drywall tape on for the drainage hole, and I'm going to grab the moss pole. So I will be right back. We are back with the moss pole, and I have installed here the drywall tape, so you can see it's covering the hole there nicely. I have a video on using drywall tape as opposed to screen. It's more economical. It comes in a nice big roll to last forever, actually. So anyway, that is covered now, and now we're going to start the repotting. So I have mixed up here some nice ProMix BX, and I am going to add some worm compost, and I am also going to add some of my Green Gourmet houseplant food here. It's very low, and it's organic and low in nutrients, but very effective and creates a self-sustaining environment for the plants. And unless you plant it in straight fertilizer, it's hard to burn the roots with this too, which is really important, because those browning leaf tips can also be from fertilizer burn as well. So anyway, we are going to mix this in, and we've got it mixed in well. This is pre-moistened soil. You always want to repot with pre-moistened soil, because if you don't, this plant is going to sink once you water, and your whole repotting will be, you'll need to repot again, because the plant won't be in the right position within the pot. Okay, so I'm adding a layer here of soil. Okay, so this is about 2 inches. I'm going to try to 2.5 inches ish. I'm going to set the pot in here, the plant in here, It looks like it's at a good position. I'm going to put a little bit more though. I think we can put a little bit more in there. So what you want to do is you want to put the plant, position the plant in the pot so that the plant, you have a 1/4 inch within the inside of the pot lip basically, so that when you water, so that the surface of the soil is a 1/4 inch down from the inside of the pot. So when you water, the water doesn't flow over the sides and not get to the roots. You also don't, however, want it to be too deep. You don't want more than a 1/4 inch deep, 1/2 inch max, because what happens when you do that is if it's too low in the pot, and that's the problem with not having moist soil to begin with, because it sinks. If it's too low in the pot, much more likely to get pests and diseases, because they thrive in that damp environment down there. And I have a video on that as well. Okay, so I am going to now start adding soil, and as I mentioned, we are adding 1/3 potting soil, and there's 2/3 root mass in this pot. Now, the Monsteras don't like to be really root bound, which means that their roots are really tight in the pot. So this is still a good, so this is why this pot you could choose with plants like Monsteras that don't like to be root bound. I do have a video on root bound and what it means, but basically it means that there's a lot of root in the pot. There are plants that prefer to be root bound, but Monsteras aren't one of them. So when repotting a Monstera, you could go a little bit bigger than the 2/3 root to 1/3 soil. You could even go closer to, I wouldn't go 1/2 and 1/2, but you could get a little, you could do a little bit more soil. You have a little more leeway with that. And your best bet is to have plants growing in the correct amount of soil, because what'll happen is they will thrive. They will just start growing like crazy, and then yes, you will have to repot into a bigger pot, but that is the better way to do it than to have a plant struggling along. You put a plant, even if it's borderline, and you have a plant, say by borderline I mean like it's a little bit too big of a pot, the plant may not succumb to root rot and die, but what it will do is it just won't thrive. It'll just sit there. So if you've had plants that are just sitting there, they're not growing anything, they're just sitting there, they may be in a little bit too big of a pot. You pot down a size and that plant will start growing. And there are other reasons for not growing too, but that is a biggie, especially if you know you've got it in the right lighting and etc. These guys like a medium bright light. Whenever you're looking into the houseplants you're growing, look at where they come from. So these plants come from the jungle. So they do climb up to the light. So they do like the bright light at their uppermost leaves, but at the same time, they are not going to be in really, really direct sunlight, because you do not find that on the jungle floor where they start and they grow up in trees. They're epiphytic plants. And I will link my epiphyte video for you too, to tell you a little bit more about epiphytes. Okay, so now you want to make sure there's no holes. So see, my finger is going all the way down here. Got the moss pull in the way a little bit there. My finger is way down there. So what you want to do is you want to make sure to poke and to make sure there's no holes. You have holes, air pockets is what they're called, then you will have problems, because the roots will dry out where those air pockets are and they will die back. And then you could even end up with root rot, because you don't have enough roots sustaining the top of the plant left alive. And you have too much wet soil in the end with that. So move around the whole thing, and as you can see, I've used a lot of soil in this. So even though this looks like a little pot for this plant, I'm actually packing a lot of soil in here for it to grow its roots into. then once I'm done with that, we are going to install the moss pole. I'm just about done with this. Make sure it's even all the way around too. You don't want one side that's all caving over, flowing over, because the water will flow to just that corner. So the evenness is really important as well. And pressing it down, tamping. It's called tamping. So if you read that term, now you know it's just basically pressing soil in, but it's important to do it for sure for the health of the plant. Okay, now, usually I would, if I would be done here, I would water at this point, but I'm not going to do that yet because I want to install the moss pole first. So I'm going to get the soil out of the way here. And here's the moss pole. I'm going to talk to you about those, have a video on them as well. Okay, their usefulness. So these are mimicking the situation, the growing situation for the plant. So how they grow naturally, the moss poles. And the one I have here came out of this box. There were 2 in this box. I have wetted this, so you can wet it before or you can spray it afterwards. You're going to want to spray it periodically as well as the plant is growing. So this is mimicking at any time, as I mentioned, you are Father or Mother Nature, to considering that. So you want, as an indoor grower, so you want to do whatever you can to mimic how things are grown out in nature, right? So this moss pole, you can keep this bent, but I'm not going to because I want it to grow up onto it. This moss pole is, oh, and always wear gloves. Well, wear gloves when you're repotting, and I'll definitely wear gloves when you're touching the moss poles because they're made with sphagnum moss, which can create a skin lesions, the condition thing, sensitivity. So be careful with that. Okay, now, so here we go. We've got this guy looking better here. Get the pots out of the way. I'm going to turn this pot over actually, so we have a nice base to put this on so you can get a better view here. Okay, so we're looking good. Now, as mentioned, this moss pole, and it goes up quite a bit. These are 25 inches. You can get even taller than that for when your plants start to get really big. You can easily replace them later. Just pull the one out and put a new one in. So these moss poles are, not only is it really healthy for the plant because they're growing like they would normally grow in the jungle, they will also absorb moisture from the pole itself as long as you keep it sprayed. I do spray with a thin mist is best. You don't want to be spraying all over your house with find a spray bottle that has a very fine mist. And so you want to keep it misted as well. And then what you want to do when you're revitalizing here, renovating the plant, etc., is you want to wrap these leaves up in here. And as the plant ages, it will also get aerial roots. Those will come out as brown or gray roots coming out of the pot. It happens on the older plants especially. So those you can also train up the pole. I have a video on them and why they're important to preserve unless you really don't like them and you can take them off. So I'm we are wrapping this here up top, and we'll continue to do that. What you want to secure it with is green garden tape. This stretches as the plant grows. It even can be pulled apart like I just did. So you want to attach with this as opposed to something like wire or string or anything, because that will cut into the stem or the trunk and can choke the plant to death, literally. So put this up a little bit more so you can see closer here. So I'm going to continue here. Now, you don't have to have all of them, all of the leaves on the moss pole, but you could if you would like to. I'm going to add some of the green garden tape in a minute. It's called tape, but it's not sticky. It's actually just a tie, really. Okay, so here, I'm going to keep adding more. I'm going to show you a overall view too at the end. Okay, so continuing. So just do what looks nice to you. The plant will actually start to grow up the pole on its own as well, but it does need some training to get started, and it may need training along the way. It may need some tying along the way. As mentioned, you don't have to put all of them on it, but this one is looking like it would be best served for me to do that, except for maybe some of the shorter ones here. So, you know, it takes a little work here to figure out, like, okay, what's going to look the best as I go here. You can tie them into each other as mentioned as well. So this tie, going to tie here. And this tie tape's very easy to cut out later. You can do little, depending on how you tie it later on, you can also go ahead and just untie it real quickly as well and then use it again. It could last a while. And when you do tie it, you don't want it to be too tight. A lot of times the leaves will cover up the tie tape so you don't see it, because I don't know why they don't make just like a nice, I've seen Velcro that you can use, but I hesitate to use that because you got to keep a good eye on it because it doesn't give, and so if the plant becomes girdled, you have a problem with it. So, but the leaves will a lot of times cover up this green tie tape as well over time. And you can also just use, like mentioned, kind of tangle it in between itself some. So, you know, we've got something going on here. Like I said, you can continue to play with it. There's more room at the top, which you'll see in a minute when I show you a full view. So that will afford it some more growth opportunities. And then it's nice to know that this is growing it like it's supposed to be growing. So I am going to clean up a bit and then show you what the final looks like. I'm also going to be watering it afterwards too, and it will be, you want to water anytime you've repotted a plant, even though there's moist soil, you want to water until water comes out the drainage hole so it's nice and moistened, and then you may not be watering again for quite a while. As the plant acclimates, you will know that it acclimates once the top half, with this plant, the top ½ inch is dried, I will water. And also once I start to see new growth, so even some of these growth tips that I had shown you, when they start to leaf out, that tells me the plant has been acclimated. It's now doing well and ready to start growing again. Okay, so be back soon with a full view without all this mess around here so you can see how nice this plant looks. Here we are back, and I have cleaned things up a bit so you can get a better look at the plant now that she's all repotted. She's elevated a little bit so you can get a good look at her, and I'm going to show you the top of the plant as well so you can see that she still has some room on the moss pole to grow up. So see, there you go, there's more room up there, so that's a good thing. I'll continue to twine her up there, and as mentioned, continue to mist the moss pole as well as make sure she stays watered, of course, too. And if needed, I will use tie tape to secure it. And then eventually, as I mentioned, the leaves will cover that up as well. So you can see she's doing really nicely now, and she looks a lot better than she did when we first started, which is good, which is obviously the intent here. So there you go for revitalizing Monstera adansonii, and looking really good here now. So we will check in with the plant at a later date and see how she's doing and how much she's grown, especially if she needs a new pot, etc. Thank you for stopping by today. Please leave any comments about any indoor gardening tutorials you'd like to see. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And please check the bell if you'd like to be notified when new videos are released.